I then want to talk about something that's more on the international stage. And that, because you have the US launching all new strikes on Iran, the regime's vowing to retaliate, and Israel's now using this latest escalation as cover for an expansion of its occupation and invasion of Lebanon. And all of this is coming within 24 hours of Trump once again implying that a deal to end this could be imminent. He kicked off the day yesterday claiming that negotiations with Iran were proceeding nicely, though he then added, "It will only be a great deal for all or no deal at all. Back to the battlefront and shooting, but bigger and stronger than ever before, and nobody wants that." Also in that post, he pushed for an expansion of the Abraham Accords, with him referring to agreements that he helped broker to normalize relations between Israel and some other countries in the region. Right, with him also saying that it should be mandatory for Saudi Arabia, Pakistan, and a few others, including two that already have diplomatic relations with Israel, to join. He even claimed that once a deal is struck, Iran could take part, writing, "Wow, now that would be something special. This will be the most important deal that any of these great but always in conflict countries will ever sign. Nothing in the past or in the future will surpass it." And yeah, you have many experts saying that would definitely be something special. And that's because it seems extremely unlikely that any of those other countries, let alone Iran, would be signing anytime soon. Especially since it's not really clear whether there's actually been true progress on a deal to end the war. The latest US proposal is reportedly focused on ending Iran's blockade of the Strait of Hormuz, with it potentially leaving some of the most contentious issues to be dealt with later. So we're talking about things including sanctions relief, the release of frozen Iranian funds, and Iran's nuclear program. You know, those little things, with the key questions on that last one being how it's going to dispose of the already highly enriched uranium and the length of any potential moratorium on enrichment. And actually with that, you had Iran's foreign ministry spokesperson claiming just yesterday, the focus of the negotiations is on ending the war, and at this stage, there is no discussion about nuclear details. Though you had Trump claiming in another post that the deal being negotiated would address the nuclear issue, with him also saying it would be the exact opposite of the nuclear agreement reached under Barack Hussein Obama and the rank amateurs of his administration, which of course he called, as he has many times before, one of the worst deals ever made by the United States. Right, well, under that Obama deal, Iran turned over most of its uranium stockpile to Russia, and enrichment was capped at 3.67% for 15 years, and then Trump, on the other hand, has called for a full moratorium on enrichment for 20 years, though notably that came after having repeatedly insisted in the past that the country should never be allowed to do so. With Trump also demanding that Iran surrender its new stockpile, almost 1,000 pounds of near weapons-grade uranium acquired since he pulled out of the Obama deal to the United States. And now he's ever so slightly walked back that demand as well, with him saying in yet another post yesterday that an alternative would be for Iran to destroy the material, with the Atomic Energy Commission, or its equivalent, being witness to this process and event. Now, notably with that, the U.S. Atomic Energy Commission actually hasn't been around since 1974, so I'm thinking that he's referring to the International Atomic Energy Agency, which is the UN nuclear watchdog. So for the sake of moving forward, we'll just assume that it was that. But Trump's ramblings about, what's going to come when the war ends, they were also followed up with a show of force that threatened to prolong the conflict, right? With U.S. strikes reportedly targeting missile launch sites in southern Iran and boats that were trying to place mines. You have the military saying that their actions were in self-defense and meant to protect U.S. troops from threats posed by Iranian forces. And then as far as Iran, they claim to have shot down an American drone and forced a fighter jet to turn around, something that also stands out when you consider how often that Trump's claimed that Iran's ability to defend itself has effectively been obliterated. And with that, it's important to know that even American intelligence agencies don't appear to agree with Trump. Right? They've reportedly found that Iran's regained access to most of its missile sites, launchers, and underground facilities, including 30 of 33 missile sites along the Strait of Hormuz. And that's as senior American military officials have also voiced concern about dwindling stockpiles of long-range missiles and other munitions, right? The same kind of equipment needed to destroy Iran's fortified underground missile sites. But then also with this, you have Iran's foreign ministry accusing the United States of violating the ceasefire agreement, arguing that the latest strikes undermine diplomatic efforts to end the war. Also, the Revolutionary Guard warned that the violation justified a decisive reciprocal response. And you had the Supreme Leader, whose father, of course, the previous Supreme Leader, was killed by American-Israeli strikes on the first day of the war, similarly suggested that his country would not back down, writing, "The hands of time do not turn backward, and the nations and lands of the region will no longer serve as shields for American bases. America, in addition to no longer having a safe place for aggression and military bases in the region, is moving further away from its former status day by day." Though despite all of that, you had Secretary of State Marco Rubio telling reporters that talks were still continuing. And on one hand, he said that a deal could be finalized within a few days, but then on the other hand, he left kind of the door wide open for failure.
There's going to be a deal. We're going to have to work through that. But this is, it's either going to be a good deal or there isn't going to be one.
Iran's foreign ministry spokesman also confirmed that talks were still happening, but rejected Rubio's timeline, saying it is correct to say that we have reached a conclusion on a large portion of the issues under discussion, but to say that this means the signing of an agreement is imminent, no one can make such a claim. But either way, while, these latest U.S. strikes might not have derailed peace talks entirely, recent events in Lebanon, they do have the potential to complicate negotiations. Right? And that's because Iran has said that it wants Lebanon protected in any agreement. But yesterday, you had Netanyahu announcing that Israel would instead intensify supply strikes on the country in response to Hezbollah's recent drone attacks, which have actually proven to be relatively effective at penetrating Israeli air defenses. So of course, like this whole thing, it is still highly asymmetrical. Hezbollah has reportedly killed 24 people in Israel, while Netanyahu claimed that Israeli forces had killed more than 600 Hezbollah fighters in recent weeks. And the overall death toll in Lebanon since early March has now reached 3,185 people, according to Lebanon's health ministry, with hundreds of thousands of people displaced. And with that, while Hezbollah claimed several attacks against Israeli troops in southern Lebanon last night, the Israeli military said that it struck more than 100 targets in the country. And today, they ordered residents to evacuate one of southern Lebanon's largest cities and expanded its ground operations beyond the so-called Yellow Line, which is the line marking the boundary of the occupied Lebanese territory that Israel described as a buffer zone. In addition to all that, Israel's now reportedly pushing the United States to give Israel free rein in Lebanon and any proposed peace deal with Iran. With one far-right Israeli minister, the same one who went viral for his treatment of detained foreign activists, saying in a press conference yesterday, "The time has come for the prime minister to bang on Trump's desk and inform him that we are resuming the war in Lebanon. We must cut off the electricity in Lebanon, conquer more territory, and return to high-intensity warfare." And then also another far-right minister who actually said that the Trump administration is the most supportive one ever, he reportedly argued yesterday that for every drone, 10 buildings in Beirut will come down. And if there were 7, then 70. And if 15, then 150. If the buildings in Beirut run out, then we'll move on to other parts of Lebanon. So that is what he said out in the open, on camera, and it's also far from the first time that he said something like that. So the US and Iran talks, they're often kind of the main focal point. You then also cannot forget about what Netanyahu and these other political figures are doing and what's happening in Lebanon.